Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Sid's Little Corner of the Internet. We've got another Transformers review coming your way. This time around, we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers R.E.D. robot-enhanced design Beast Wars Optimus Primal. So this is the non-converting figure line, the Transformers R.E.D., so they don't transform into anything. They are just as accurate as you can get for the price point as far as screen accuracy. So let's go ahead and bring that packaging in and take a look. So right up at the top, you have R.E.D. Robot Enhanced Design. Down here you have Transformers Beast Wars Optimus Primal non-converting figure. Transformers at the side. Over here on this side, this is the little window panel where you can see the accessories that he comes with. On the back, you have Transformers Beast Wars Optimus Primal. Then you have those product shots. And right here you have R.E.D. Down here you have all your warnings. And you do have the non-converting sad baby. Over here on the side, you've just got a splash of artwork, and then if you look at it in that three-quarter view, you can get a good look at Optimus Primal there. Up top, you have Transformers Beast Wars. Down low, manufacturing information. And that is it for the packaging, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what came inside that box. So here's everything that came inside that box, and it's really not a lot, especially compared to some of the other R.E.D. figures, but let's go ahead and jump into it, and we'll start as we always do. You do get your little sheet of warnings all folded up, conveniently ready for disposal. And then you do get an extra set of hands, and you get the sword. So let's go ahead and start with the hands. So these are his sword-holding hands. Now, in the box, coming out of the box, he comes pre-installed with his fists, just kind of a closed fist ready for punching something. But these are the sword hands. So let's go ahead and take a look there and look at some of those details. I think they do look really well done as far as sword hands go. Now I will tell you that I do have a gripe with these, and that is these hands are molded to hold the swords, but it is a royal pain to get the swords installed in these hands. The very first time I did it, it was genuinely frustrating. So just something to be aware of when you pick this guy up, or if you pick this guy up, that you may have a little bit of difficulty getting those swords in these hands. But yeah, I mean, look at those details. They even have like little gorilla fingernails on there. So yeah, very well done. And they are mirror images of each other, so they're the same thing. There's nothing different between the two other than just the mirror symmetry, if you will. All right. So now let's go ahead and take a look at those swords, and same thing with the swords. They are mirror images of each other with one additional feature, I suppose, but let's go ahead and take a look at one first. So I think for the most part, these look okay. I really would have liked to have seen, considering this is a non-converting figure and for the price point, I would have liked to have seen more paint apps on these swords. I think they could have done a lot more down in this area. So not a complaint exactly, but kind of a wish list item. I would have liked to have seen them done something more. But for the most part, I think the swords look good. And then you'll see down here on the ends, like I say, they are identical. But if you look down here on the ends, you do have this little clasp feature. And that is so you can take both of these swords and you can join them together. So he has his super spinny sword that you can do something like that with. So, and he does hold it pretty well. And it looks pretty cool when he's doing it. So no major complaints there. But there you go. All right, so that is everything that came inside the box except for Mr. Primal. So let's take a look at this guy. Let's bring him in for a close-up view and look at those details and articulation. And here he is in all of his glory, Mr. Optimus Primal. So let's take a look at this guy. We'll start up with that head. And I think that head looks pretty darn good. I mean, they do have some nice paint apps on there. And he does have his primal lips. So always good to see those. And you do have little touches of paint right there on the ends of his antenna, which look pretty good. And even around back, you know, you've got good molded in detail all the way around on that head. Now, you do have this chest piece, but I'm going to show you something. This is something that I like. I'm surprised that I did, but I do like it. So you do have those nice paint apps in there and a little bit of detail, and you have that red right there in that center portion. But you also have, if you take this off, you have detail on the back, which is cool. But then you also have all this six-pack ab gorilla pec detail action going on right there. So you can take his breastplate off and you can see what's going on underneath. Now this also helps, we'll talk about it in our articulation, but this also helps with the ab crunch. It's kind of hard to do an ab crunch when this is on, but yeah, all that detail in there. So job well done on that. I do appreciate that very much. Now coming down to the crotch piece, you do get a little bit of detail in there, not a lot going on. I think this would have benefited from some paint apps down here, but molding wise it looks pretty good. And then coming down here to the legs, not a lot to see, it's just done well. Alright, so you do have those red kneecaps, and then coming down here, this is, once again, this is where I think they could have benefited from some paint apps. I mean, you've got these pistons in here. They sure could have done something more as far as coloring. If they would have molded them in a different color or had a paint app or something, it would have been nice to have a little bit of an offset there. But you come down to those primal feet, they look pretty good for the most part. And then coming up here to the side of the figure, good texturing in that molded fur. And then coming up here, you've got some good detail there. All looks good, no major complaints. Up underneath, good detail all through here as well, so nothing big to complain about. And looking at his arms, we'll start with those fists, since we saw the open fists earlier, the sword hands, and we'll see those now. And you have those forearms. Now the forearms, they do have the gimmick. If I can get it out here, there we go. So you do have your forearm guns in there as well. So take a nice look at those. So very cool, nice to see that that was included. And then you do have your painted upper arm area right there. And even up in there you can see there's a little bit going on. And then on the inside of the arms you do have some of that almost mechanical detail. So very cool. Alright, and then coming around to the back, so he does have his backpack, if you will. Now he does have his guns, so you can bring those guns out, you can bring them forward and have them sitting just like that. So give him that traditional Optimus Primal look, which is really cool. So like I said, bring both of those forward and you can adjust those anywhere you want. Do what you want with them. Alright, and then just like the front, this backpack comes off. Now it's a tick looser. I would have liked to have it been a little bit tighter, but it holds on pretty well. So you've got a little bit going on in there, but you can take this off and then you just have the textured gorilla back going on right there. So he has a pretty plain gorilla booty. He's got those big old red hips. And then coming down here to the back, you do get those simulated gorilla toes from his alt mode. So yeah, I mean, from a detail standpoint, for the most part, I think this guy just hits the nail right on the head. Could have benefited from a few more paint apps, just in a few small areas, just to make it pop a little bit more. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, for this price point, I think you get a good amount of detail here. So moving on to the articulation, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this off, and we'll talk real quick. Yeah, you can move those, so if you count that as articulation, but I'm going to leave this off and I'm going to take the breastplate off. So that way we can really get into the meat of the articulation of this guy, because very job well done here as far as articulation goes on this figure. So on the head, you get your typical left, right, all the way around, side to side, and then it is on that dog bone. So much like Optimus Prime and Megatron and the others in the red line, you can get a little bit of, hopefully that's showing, forward and back and side to side. So you can get some additional movement there, which is very cool. And then you do have independent movement of his shoulder pads. Now I don't know if this is by design or it's just the way it was assembled, but you can kind of adjust those if you're going to pose him and put him wherever you want. And you do also have a bit of a butterfly motion in these shoulders. So if you look up underneath here, you can see that you've got a ball joint in there, so you can get additional butterfly style motion in that shoulder. And of course you can take that shoulder all the way around if you choose to do so. And due to the shoulder pads, you can only bring the arms up that high, but that's plenty, especially considering that you can just turn this around and do whatever you need to do with it. All right, so you get bicep rotation right up here. And then you get a double jointed elbow, so you can get a nice deep elbow bend on this guy. So very good to see. And then down here at the wrists, because these are removable, you get wrist rotation all day long. You don't get any wrist tilt. You just get the rotation. All right, and then coming down here to the midsection. Now let's go ahead and talk about that ab crunch. So taking this breastplate off does give you access to give him that ab crunch right there, which is really cool. Always good to see. I love being able to have these guys look down like, ooh, what is that? Is that an ant? Oh, nope, it's just a human. And then you do get a little bit in the back as well. It's not anything major, but you can tilt his back a little bit. But yeah, that ab crunch is great. Love having an ab crunch on a figure. And then you do get your waist rotation, so always good to have that. Now this is where I think he suffers a little bit. I am a fan of the Van Damme. I love the big splits, and you're not really going to get these with him. You're going to get about that much. So he does start just running into himself, and yeah, you can maneuver these around and try to get a little bit more out if you want, but it's only going to be by a few degrees. So a little disappointing there in the hips. Also a little bit disappointing in this front kick. So you can get a front kick of about that much before you start running into yourself. Same thing, you can turn the leg around and you could do a front kick like that if you want to, but then his leg is out to the left and it looks kind of weird. So just a straight, this is Sparta kind of thing, you're not going to do it. Not to mention, you are going to kind of tear your paint up right there if you overdo it a little bit, which I just did a little bit. I'm not too worried about it, but you can see how over time you're going to have issues right there if you try to overextend those legs. Okay, so you do have thigh rotation, so you can take that around that far to the back and that far to the front, so a good amount of thigh rotation. Double jointed knees on here as well, which you're going to need, but you still don't get a hugely deep knee bend. Did I say hugely deep? You don't get a deep knee bend. I can't believe I said hugely deep. Shame on me. Anyway, you don't get a very deep knee bend, but you do have that double joint there to help you get that as far as you can take it. And then you bring that back. Now down here is, he's got some pluses and he's got some minuses. So he does have the ability to bring that foot down about that far, bring it up about that far. I would have liked to have seen more range of motion there. Also would have liked to have seen more range of motion in that ankle tilt. So it's very limited in the ankle tilt. Would have liked to have had more there. I would have liked to have seen them do something different down here to give you that, because I mean, you're going to get his legs out about that far, and he's going to be sitting on the edges of these feet. He's just not going to be flat-footed, and that's a little disappointing, especially for a figure that is not converting. So they could have changed something with this geometry or this design to give you a little bit more ankle tilt there, but maybe that's just me. Now, you do have, these are actually quite useful, these little gorilla toes back here, because depending on the position, you can get those toes in the back to help you with countering that weight if you have him at an awkward angle. So that's helpful. Now, something else I want to mention while I have him right here is, at least on my copy, these ankles are kind of weak. They're not really incredibly weak, but they are enough that it makes me worry. It makes it real easy to just do that. Like they just want to tilt back and he wants to go backwards. So something to be aware of. Same thing forward. You have to find that sweet spot to get him to stand up with those ankles. So just something to be aware of there, guys. All right, so what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and I'll get him all armored up and get his accessories on him, and we'll take a look at him from there. And here we have Mr. Primal all armed up and ready to go into battle. And so I do have those two swords together, similar to what we saw on the back of the box for the product shot. Now, full disclosure, this is not an easy thing to do. Between these fists and getting these swords aligned, it's almost more work than what it's worth. But I wanted to go ahead and show you guys because it does look kind of cool once you get it there. I mean, it's a good look. So I can't complain too much about that. But as you can see, I did have to, give his hands a little bit of a release there because I was putting stress on the shoulders, or on the swords. But I think it came out looking pretty good for the most part. And then, of course, you can have his guns ready at the go, and you can do something like that as well. Now, to get the swords apart, it's not that hard, really. I mean, you're just going to give these a little bit of a pull, and then you can have him holding his swords individually once I tuck the sword back in his hand and make it look good. There we go. So you can have something like that, and I probably ought to turn his sword around. So let's do a quick edit right here, and I'll get this sword turned around. Hey, alright, there we go. Through the magic of video editing, you guys did not have to watch me play with this guy and try to pose him up, so you just get to enjoy the spoils of all that work. So yeah, here he is with the swords in each hand individually, and he does have his arm cannons out and at the go. So they are all set and ready, and I think this guy really does look good. I don't have any complaints, really, any major complaints from an aesthetic standpoint. He's got a great shelf presence, and this is Optimus Primal through and through. So no major concerns or issues there. The only thing that I would say is, you know, for a few dollars more, you get an actual converting Optimus Primal figure that looks pretty darn good in the form of the Kingdom Optimus Primal. Now the Kingdom Optimus Primal is a little bit smaller. We'll see that here in the comparisons here shortly. But, you know, it's really going to be up to you. Do you want a non-converting figure that's a little bit bigger, that has a great shelf presence, or, you know, do you want to pay a few dollars more and get one that actually converts? So that's really going to be up to you. But for me, I think this guy looks really good. I think he goes in well with the rest of the Transformers Red line, and he does have some great posability on him. So now that we've talked about the accessories, and I've given a little tease about the comparisons, let's go ahead and jump right into those. We'll start doing those comparisons now so you can see how this guy stacks up to some other figures out there. Alright, so for our first comparison, here we see the Transformers Red Optimus Primal on the left, and on the right we have the 2021 reissue of the original Beast Wars G1 Optimus Primal figure. Next up we have the Transformers Red Optimus Primal on the left, next to the Transformers Kingdom Optimus Primal on the right. So on the left you have the non-converting figure, and on the right you do have the one that actually transforms into his alt mode, into his gorilla mode. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I mean, for a few dollars more, you could have this figure, which I think looks great in his robot mode, especially, you know, looking at the two of them here. They both look really good in their bot modes, but you get the addition of having a really cool alt mode in this figure as well. Now you do lose a little bit of articulation, and he is a little bit smaller, but really this is going to come down to what you prefer. If you're a big Optimus Primal fan, then by all means you'll pick up both of them. But you know, if you're simply looking for something that is going to look good in his robot mode and have an alt mode, then the Kingdom Optimus Primal is the way to go. The Transformers Red Optimus Primal looks great. So if you are somebody who doesn't really care about the alt mode and you're just looking for a nice screen accurate Optimus Primal, then Transformers Red is the way to go. Really going to be your call on this, but both of these guys look good. For our next comparison, here we see the Transformers Red Beast Wars Optimus Primal next to the Transformers Red Beast Wars Cheetor. And this Beast Wars Cheetor is probably my favorite Red figure. He looks awesome, and definitely if you're looking for screen accuracy or robot mode screen accuracy, the Transformers Red Cheetor definitely wins over the Transformers Kingdom Cheetor. So definitely not a similar situation between the two Optimus Primals as there are between the two Cheetors. But yeah, this is these two guys look really, really good together. It's fun to see in the Transformers Red line. It's fun to see the Beast Wars the group kind of forming there. So they look great. And our next comparison is, of course, Transformers Red Optimus Primal on the left, next to the Transformers Red Optimus Prime on the right. And it's cool to see these two guys together, and you can see just how much bigger. And these are in the same line. They're both the Red R.E.D line, and you can see just how much bigger Optimus Primal is than Optimus Prime. So you get a lot more plastic there, man, he just looks huge compared to Optimus Prime. But there you go. And just for fun, here we see a kind of a family photo. This is the Transformers Red Optimus Primal with all the other Transformers Red figures that I have in my collection so far. I believe there are a couple more figures available at the time of this recording. I just don't have them in my collection yet. So this is what I have, but it's still cool to see all these Transformers Red figures together, and I do think from a collection standpoint that this is a fun line if you like non-converting figures. All right, that wraps up comparisons, so let's go ahead and get into those final thoughts. Yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about the Transformers Red Beast Wars Optimus Primal. This is going to be a tough one. It really is, because he has such stiff competition from an actual transforming, converting Optimus Primal out there in the market right now in the form of the Transformers Kingdom Optimus Primal. So he's got a big uphill battle for him to try to win people over. So let's go ahead and talk about the numbers a little bit and try to quantify this guy. We'll start, as we always do, with the aesthetics. I think for the most part, this guy looks great. He has a great shelf presence. He certainly captures the screen accuracy for Optimus Primal from Beast Wars. It looks good from any angle. I think he could have benefited from a few more paint apps, particularly in the cod piece area and maybe down on those pistons by the ankles. I think that would have really helped pop the figure, if you will. And I do believe that having a little bit of extra paint on those swords could have gone a long way as well. But for the most part, the overall aesthetics on this guy, I think he looks great. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. Now, moving on to articulation, he's got a big negative for me in that ankle tilt, or the lack thereof. It's so limited. I'm not real happy with the limited ankle movement on this guy. However, I am absolutely giddy with the ab crunch. So if I had to pick between the two, I would go ankle tilt 100 times out of 100. But having the ability to have an ab crunch on this figure to get him into some nice, fun poses definitely goes a long way for me. So I can offset my disappointment in the ankle tilt a little bit with that ab crunch on there. I'm going to give him, it's a very soft 9, but I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. I debated whether or not I was going to go between an 8 or a 9 on the articulation, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this guy a 9 out of 10 on articulation. Now, as far as the accessories go, I think that for this price point, and for the fact that he's a non-converting figure, where Hasbro makes this up, or where Hasbro should make this up, is in accessories, and I don't think they make it up the greatest on this figure. When you look at some of the other Transformers Red figures, they come with all kinds of extra accessories. This guy comes with 2 swords and 2 extra fists. So not the greatest accessory lineup that I've seen in a Transformers Red figure. I think he really could have benefited from blast effects for his shoulder cannons. Those blast effects that came with the Transformers Red Cheetor, just absolutely won me over. So I think blast effects would have gone a long way here. Additionally, it would have been nice if you could have popped that head off, or put they could have included that mutant mask from the Beast Wars show, so you could have given Optimus Primal his mutant mask in this mode. So I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 on accessories. The accessories that he comes with, they are pretty good. I do like those swords, but I think it's overall a little bit weak for this price point. Now, moving on to quality. I have 2 issues with quality, which I mentioned earlier. Number 1 are the sword hands that he comes with. They were a little too tight at the beginning. Even now, to try to get those swords in his hands and to get them to fit properly, they can be a real pain. And I don't know if it's from a molding standpoint, like if they were toleranced incorrectly, or if it is by design, they're not very much fun to get those swords in. Once you get the swords in, they look good, but getting the swords in takes some of the fun away. So I don't know exactly if that's a quality issue or if that's a design issue, but I'm going to qualify it under the quality tab at this point. And then the second thing is going back to those ankles. You have the limited movement, and that's part of the articulation, but the actual ankles themselves are a little too loose for this figure. He has a lot of plastic, and he's actually a heavy figure, and you're depending on those ankle joints to keep him balanced, and I think they're a little too loose coming out of the box than what they should have been. So I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10 on quality. I think they could have done a little bit better there. Now, overall value. I will start off by saying that I picked this figure up at a local Walmart. It was $22 US off the shelf, so that he is available in the wild. I will say that I think that's pretty expensive for a non-converting figure. Again, going back to the fact that for a few dollars more, you can get a transforming version of Optimus Primal from the Transformers Kingdom line that looks almost as good in robot mode and has an alt mode that you can transform him into. So this guy got some stiff competition as far as value goes in my book. Additionally, I've noticed that over the past year, the price of the red figures has gone up slightly. Now, that could be because of the current supply chain issues, could be because of natural inflation, but it's making it more difficult to justify spending $22 US on a non-converting figure. So I think that Hasbro would have done themselves some favors had they included some additional accessories to try to up the value on this guy. So overall value, I'm going to give this guy an 8 out of 10. I had debated giving him a 7, but I do think that from an overall shelf presence, I think that once you get him in hand, I think he's worth it. So that brings us to a grand total out of a possible 50 points. It puts him at 42 points out of 50, which is an 84%. So if you like the Transformers Red figures, this guy is one that I can recommend. If you are on the fence about Transformers Red, if it's not something that you put in your collection and you're looking for a good Optimus Primal, he's a possibility, but I have to go back to if you can get your hands on a Transformers Kingdom Optimus Primal that actually converts into his alt mode, then that may be the road that you want to go down. You're going to lose a little bit of size, but boy, they both look good. And for a few dollars more, you get a figure that transforms. So this is going to be a tough one. This is, as always, it is up to you. I mean, it's your money. You need to be the one to make that decision on what you want to do. Me personally, I'm glad I picked this guy up. I do like the Transformers Red line. I think he looks good with the Transformers Red Cheetor. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the rest of the Beast Wars line for Red. But I would have to say I wouldn't blame you if you pass this guy up, and I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes a shelf warmer. So with that being said, that is going to wrap the review up. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all the support. If you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this guy or the Transformers Red line in general. I'm curious to see what the market can handle out there as far as non-converting Transformers goes. So with that, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Until we see you in the next review, take care.